you. Thank you very, very much. I appreciate it. Thank you. Well, good morning to you. Thank you so much for coming out on a bright and early Monday morning, and we appreciate your joining us here this morning in Shawano. I was instructed how to pronounce that before I came here, and I got it. I was on actually a Madison radio station, and they made it clear to me that don't show like you don't know where you are, and we have a ton of towns like that in Pennsylvania. Every state does, and it is great to be here. And I just want to thank you for coming out this morning. We're wrapping up. This is our final home stretch coming down here in Wisconsin, and we've been working harder than anybody else out there. We've been to I think 23 or 24 counties just in the last week, and we've been hustling, trying to meet as many people as we can, and trying to do what I think is necessary, which is work hard for this. Earn it. That's one of the things I think is important, that as we go through this process, that the way you bring people together, the way you're able to rally folks, is you go out and work for it. You go out and earn it. You don't have someone else come in and say, oh well, they should be giving it to you because you either raise the most money or you have the most endorsements. You go out and fight for it. That's what America's all about. You go out and you work hard. You put your nose to the grindstone, and you make a difference in this country, and that's what we've done in this race. No one would have expected us to be here. If you think about it, not even 6 months ago, a little over 3 months ago, 3 months tomorrow actually, was the Iowa caucuses. So 3 months and 2 weeks ago, I was driving around Iowa with my son John, a guy named Chuck, and a Dodge Ram pickup truck. And we were just going out and talking to folks about a vision for our country. It was and some people say, well, why are you doing this? You're not going to get any attention. No one's paying attention to the debates. No one's paying attention to the national media. No one's focused on what you're doing. And I said, well, you know what? I trust the good people of this country. If they hear a message and they see a messenger and they're able to make a decision as to what they think is best, not defer their judgment to the pundits or the political class or to the media, but actually trust their hearts. Listen to the candidates. Try to get a sense of who they are. And then go out and do the right thing. Just go out and do what your conscience calls you to do. And that's what I did when I went around Iowa. I said, all I ask you to do is just be faithful to what your conscience is. Be faithful to what you think is in the best interest of this country. And people stepped forward, even though we were, again, not given a chance. And in the state of Iowa alone, we spent about $30,000 total on advertising, as opposed to the millions that our opponents spend, literally millions that they spend. And we've been going through this process the whole way. And we've had people step up. You saw Josh Duggar here in the Duggar family. And I'll never forget driving up about a week before the Iowa caucuses. We just started to creep up on the polls a little bit. And I pulled up, but we had no money. We were just out there, like I said, with the Chuck truck and me and my son. And I pulled up in front of a Holiday Inn Express, and there's this huge bus that said Rick Santorum for president on the side of it. I looked over at Chuck. I said, who authorized that? We don't have any money. I can't even, we're trying to just put money in the gas tank here. And you got this huge bus, and well, it wasn't us. It was the Duggar family out of Arkansas who came up and just felt a calling to try to make a change in this country. And we've seen this. We've had people come literally from all over the country and come to state as we move from state to state to state and volunteer. We had about 20,000 phone calls made yesterday from folks all over the country into Wisconsin. Volunteers who just signed up on our online and decided to just not robocalls, not these negative, nasty robocalls that you've been getting, but real people who are convinced that our country needs a strong, principled conservative, someone who can go out and make a difference for our country and not just win the election, but win the election with a mandate to do the things that are necessary to get this country back on track. And so we've gone out and said, we've gone out and talked to conservatives all across this country, Tea Party activists, folks who believe that things in Washington are just absolutely broken, and we don't need, a new manager to go in and manage Washington, manage the growth and the size and scale of the federal government, have timid plans, both to get the economy growing and to reduce the federal budget deficit and to reduce the size and scale of government. No national security experience to be able to go out and deal with the difficult problems that we're confronting. We need someone who has a track record of being a little bit of a bomb thrower. Someone who's gone in and shaken things up. Someone who hasn't been the candidate of the establishment any time I've ever run. We ran in 1990, I ran against a 14-year Democratic incumbent, given no chance to win, was outspent badly. Again, the press didn't cover me, nobody paid attention to it, but what did I do? I went out and Karen and I knocked on 20,000 doors. We went out and did coffees and teas. This would have been a huge, huge crowd for us. I don't think we ever had a crowd this size. And we just went out and worked hard. And it's like we've been doing here in this race. And people saw in us something that they could relate to, someone they could believe in, someone who maybe you could see that these convictions were not just written on an Etch-a-Sketch. They were written on our heart, that we really do believe that this country needs some fundamental changes to get back to the principles that made our country great. And as a result of that, we were able to win that race against an incumbent. We we're matched up against another incumbent in redistricting. We won that race. I beat a Democratic incumbent to win in Pennsylvania for the United States Senate. We've got a track record of running as a conservative, running as an underdog, running against the establishment, both in the Republican Party and against tough Democratic incumbents. And we have the grit, determination, and perseverance, because we've been able to rally the people of America across this country and in Pennsylvania, across the spectrum in Pennsylvania, a state with almost 1 million more registered Democrats than Republicans, yet blue-collar Democrats, folks who didn't necessarily agree with me on everything, voted for me. Why? Because they knew they could trust me. They knew I was going to go out and work hard for them, not kowtow to the establishment in Washington, D.C., and as a result, we won upset after upset. That's the kind of record that wins elections that we need if we're going to win this election in the general election. And someone who can present a clear, hopeful, positive vision for our country. If you look at this race, one of the sad parts of this race over the past several months is just the negativity, the bombardment of Super PAC and other types of ads just tearing down, tearing down, tearing down. Instead of trying to talk about what the big issues of this country are, not issues that happened 10 years ago that have nothing to do with the problems today, but real substantive issues that are going to decide this election. And of course, I always believe that the biggest issue that's going to decide this election is, yes, the economy. Yes, our energy policy. Yes, the size and scale of the federal government and the deficit. Yes, national security and the concerns. Yes, the concerns about the family and the dignity of every human life. All of these issues are important. But what is the fundamental problem here in this country that's causing, I think, the stress and strain that we see and the anxiety that we see is a burgeoning federal government that is trying to take control of your lives and rob you of your fundamental freedoms. That is what's hurting this economy. That's what's hurting the family. That's what's hurting everything. And so we've gone out and talked about big things. And we've used this, description of who America is, who we are. Ronald Reagan was classic in being able to motivate the American people. Why? Because he painted a picture. In fact, in his farewell address, one of the things the last thing he said to America was his concern about Americans forgetting about what it means to be an American, about American history, about the legacy that we stand upon, the shoulders of our founders and our ancestors we stand upon, and that made this country great. I was just reading something last night from the state of California, and at the California universities, it's several, I think it's 7 or 8 of the California system of universities don't even teach an American history course. It's not even available to be taught. Just to tell you how bad it's gotten. in this country where we're trying to disconnect the American people from the roots of who we are so they have an understanding of what America should be. But if you don't teach Americans, if you don't have leaders who remind us what made us great, and you don't teach it in the schools, you don't have it in the popular culture or in the media, then guess what happens? Then that American public can become detached and become much more molded in a model that is antithetical to the principles that we believe in. That's why you see younger people saying, well, you believe in capitalism or socialism, an increasing number are saying socialism, not capitalism. Why? Because they're detached from who we are. Well, I think one of the things that brings us together as a country is those founding principles. And those founding principles are very, very simple. We believe in limited government. That's what the Constitution of the United States says. We believe in limited government. I thank God for the Tea Party and what they've been able to do to revitalize the Constitution as a living document that stands for something, that isn't malleable and changing whatever a court or a president wants it to do. But as we saw from the debates in the Supreme Court just last week, actually, it was probably chilling to the left to hear when the justices questioned the Obama lawyer, are there any limits to federal power if we do this? And he basically couldn't give any limits. It basically takes the Constitution and just wipes it out and says it doesn't matter. That the enumerated powers and the limited powers of the government of the federal level, and that the rest of the powers in this country go to the states and to the people. That's no longer the case under Obama's world. It's no longer the case under America going forward unless we're able to win this election. And we need to have a presidential candidate that can paint this vision to remind us that we believe in limited government and the unlimited potential of the American people. We believe in rights that rights don't come from the government. In fact, our founding fathers specifically rejected that, specifically talked about how rights which for thousands of years always came from the sovereign, the king, they don't come from that. No, our founding fathers in our founding document, the Declaration of Independence, said, we hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal and endowed by their with certain unalienable rights. You see, that's what makes America different. It makes us different than any other country in the history of the world. That we have a system built on God-given rights, not government-given rights. And free people being able to have a government that protects or guarantees those rights so they can provide for themselves, their families, their communities, their churches, civic and community organizations and businesses, and build a great country from the bottom up. That's the vision and model of America. That's what works in America. And we have to have a candidate who goes out and unites us around that principle, because that's what America is. America isn't an ethnicity, it isn't a race. It's a group of people who share an ideal. The ideal of our founding principles of God-given rights and being able to build a great and successful country from the bottom up. And we need to have a candidate that go out and make the case against Barack Obama that he is undermining the very basic principles of America and trying to make us and turn us into something that we have never intended to be. Trying to turn us into the countries that our founders left because they didn't want to be controlled by a big, strong federal government or by a king. Ladies and gentlemen, I believe we're the best candidate to make that case on the most important issues of the day. And that's why we've been able to accomplish what we have to date. Winning those 11 states by going out and taking issue by issue and taking President Obama apart on his failed record and on his centralization of power among the elites to try to control you and your lives. And of course, first and foremost is Obamacare. There is no issue that encapsulates all of the problems that the left in America is going to reap on the United States and on individuals more than Obamacare. First, it's a huge expansion of the federal government in an area of the government that is already exploding and causing the deficits that we have. When I was born, less than 10% of the federal budget was spent on entitlement programs. It's now 60%. And with Obamacare, it'll be over 70%, a $2 trillion new entitlement. Not just an entitlement, but where the government is going to go from a position prior to Obamacare when about 45%, and by the way, that's a high in our country's history, in large part because of the slow economy. But 40 to 45% of Americans receive some form of government benefit, some form of direct payment or food stamp or something like that, housing subsidy. 40 to 45% of Americans. Some have suggested when it reaches 50%, it's over. We have about 50% of people in this country that don't pay taxes, and we'll have about 50% of the people in this country that receive benefits. And some suggest, well, if that actually happens, then why would we ever be able to have limited government again? Well, think of this. Under Obamacare, 100% of Americans will be dependent upon the federal government for their health. 100%. And once that happens, once that dependency settles in, I'll give you a story that I heard from Juan Williams. This was a couple of days before Obamacare passed, and I happened to run into him in the Fox studios, and I told him, I said, you guys are committing political suicide by shoving this down the throats of the American people. He said, well, let me tell you what the White House just told me. Quote, we believe Americans love entitlements. And once we get them hooked on this entitlement, they will never let it go. That's how they see you. People that they can hook, people that they can control, because they will now be the gateway to access to care for you and your loved ones. Margaret Thatcher said she was never able to accomplish in Britain what Reagan accomplished during the time of America, turning it back from the precipice of socialism. And she said the reason? People's dependence on the British national health care system. There's a reason they're pushing hard. The reason they're fighting so diligently. It's because they know they will undermine the very foundation of our country. That's why this is the most important issue in this race. Because it's not just an explosion of the federal government. It's not just higher taxes, slower growth in the economy as a result, people losing their private sector health care and going on to Medicaid or other government subsidized programs. It's not just the budget deficit exploding by what surely will be hundreds of billions of dollars in more federal debt. But it's about freedom. It's about government not only making economic decisions for you, but as we see, when the government gives you a right, as President Obama says he's doing, he's giving you a right. He can tell you how to exercise that right, not only forcing you to buy insurance, but forcing you to do things that are against your own religious beliefs. Imagine this country, a country that was founded by people who came to this country so they could have religious liberty. Now we have a government that has gone to the point where they believe they can impose their values on people of faith and force you to do things that you believe are gravely evil. Ladies and gentlemen, this is not the America that you were given. You were given a country as this generation that was growing and prospering, that had just left the Reagan years, this generation, these last 25 years, after Ronald Reagan turned this country around, and we have, through elections after elections, allowed government to expand and grow, and now we're at the precipice. If we don't win this election, this most important election in our country's history, then we will be the generation that let the flame of freedom here in America go out. That's why we need someone who can go out and take Barack Obama on this issue. And unfortunately, as you see from this graphic, we have one candidate in this race who's uniquely disqualified to do that, because he, in fact, put together the blueprint for Obamacare, and in fact passed it in the state of Massachusetts and defends it today as the right thing to do. Defends it today as the right thing to do. Can you imagine a general election where this issue of government control of our lives, in the most central area of our lives, our health, is off the table, and in fact could be used against us? The Achilles heel of Barack Obama, 75% of the public is against the federal government forcing us to buy health insurance, against Obamacare. And if we put forward a nominee that agrees with him, we take this Achilles heel, this opportunity to make this issue central, a winning issue, we take it off the table. Why would we give that issue away in this process? That's why we're here. That's why I believe we were able to win Louisiana by 23% just a little over a week ago. That's why you have a majority of Republicans saying, we want you to stay in this race. We want the opportunity to be able to elect a conservative, someone who can take it to Barack Obama, not just on health care, but on one of the other big issues of the day, energy. We're looking at $5 in some places, gallons of gasoline, because of the president's policies, all driven by his belief in man-made global warming. Because he sees all this energy in the ground as a liability, not an asset. And so he has policies that are shutting down federal lands, shutting off offshore, Alaska, not building the Keystone Pipeline, all of which are designed to keep energy prices high. Why? Because he believes that carbon dioxide is this very virulent toxin that is going to destroy the world. Tell that to a plant. Ladies and gentlemen, we need someone who can go after the president on man-made global warming and shutting down drilling and not producing more oil and gas in this country. We need someone who can make that an issue in the campaign. Well, I can do that. I'm the grandson of a coal miner. I've always supported more drilling and more mining and lower energy prices, because it's very clear the lower the energy prices are, guess what? The higher the standard of living you have. It's as simple as that. We understand that. I come from Western Pennsylvania. It's a lot like here. We understand sort of these meat and potato issues at a very base level. Well, Governor Romney, not so much. Even through last year, he said, oh yeah, I believe in man-made global warming, we have to do something. He had, when he was governor of Massachusetts, put the first CO2 cap, carbon dioxide cap, on coal-fired power plants and crowed about it. Was for cap and tax, putting a cap on carbon dioxide emissions and taxing you if you use too much energy. He supported that, just like President Obama. And he even said during his governor of Massachusetts that high gas prices are here to stay, and that we don't need to be doing more drilling. Now, of course, he's taken out the reset button, the Etch-a-Sketch, and he's now for more drilling. But you don't think you're going to hear this in the general election? You don't think you're going to hear the fact that Governor Romney, again, is not qualified to go out and make the case? Again, why would we take the issue of higher gas prices, slowing down our economy, off the table? Ladies and gentlemen, we need someone who has a positive, uplifting vision, can make Barack Obama and his failed policies the issue in this race. Someone who has a vision to be able to grow our economy, not with little 64 or whatever different changes to the tax code that Governor Romney has suggested, but a dramatic change in the tax code. Eliminate the corporate tax for manufacturers. Why? Because we want to have things made in America again. You go out and talk about lower energy prices, combine that with eliminating the corporate tax on manufacturers and saying to those manufacturers who did send their products overseas or manufacturing overseas that if you come back and you take the money that you made, that's about $1.5 trillion that's sitting in overseas banks right now, because if you bring it back to America as profit, you have to pay an additional 35% tax. So they leave it over there and they reinvest it in their businesses there. Our plan is if you bring it back and you invest it in plant and equipment here in Wisconsin, or in any place in America, you pay zero tax. We're going to have $1 trillion coming back to grow the manufacturing sector of this economy. We're going to create an opportunity with lower energy prices and the jobs created from those lower energy prices to put folks back to work from the bottom of the economic scale to lower skilled to semi-skilled workers all the way to the top. We'll create a dynamism in this economy, particularly in small town and rural America, because that's the area that's been hurt the hardest by energy, not allowing energy to be taken out of the ground or mining. Of course, all because of this administration. And of course, manufacturing. Almost every little town in America was built because of some manufacturing and processing plant that started the town. And a lot of those towns have seen those manufacturers, well, go away. Now you can go out and compete to bring them back, because that's where manufacturers like to locate. In small towns where they become a part of the fabric of the community, can build a supplier base. This is a revitalization of the industrial age of America. We can do it. People want to come back here. I hear it from manufacturers all the time, that because of intellectual property rights or problems of stability of the government, the more and more they go overseas, the more they'd like to come back, but they just find a hostile environment here. Well, one of the hostile environments has to do with regulations. This president is setting all sorts of records about the number of regulations and the cost of regulations. What I've said is, again, unlike any other candidate in this race, on day one, I will repeal every single high-cost Obama regulation. That's about 400 to 500 of them. We will change the atmosphere in Washington, D.C. and say to the American entrepreneur, we are open for business, open up here in America, create jobs here in America. Folks, we will also attack the budget deficit. It's one of the other things holding back our economic growth. I propose $5 trillion in cuts over 5 years, a balanced budget in 5 years. No one else has been that bold. No one else has said that they'll propose a budget with less money every year than the year before. We're going to get serious. We're going to adopt a lot of Paul Ryan's ideas, but actually accelerate them. They're good ideas, they just phase in too slowly. We need to accelerate those, to shrink the size of government, grow the economy. That 1-2 punch will reduce this budget deficit, get us on a path to balance, and then we need to pass a balanced budget amendment to the Constitution to lock that in for future generations. When you lock it in, a balanced budget amendment that limits the size of government to 18% of the overall economy, here's what you've done. You guaranteed freedom. Why? Because if the government can only be 18 cents out of every dollar, right now it's 24 cents, a high. It's been over about 24 cents for the last 4 years. The average since World War II is 18. I mean, it's a huge increase in spending. We need to get that spending back, and when you do, you guarantee freedom. Why? Because government can't be big enough to take your rights away. So this is a bold plan that talks about growing the economy, shrinking Washington, creating more freedom and opportunity. And of course, we also talk about the family. It's one of the things that most of the candidates don't. But we need to have policies that are pro-family. I actually wrote a book about it back in 2005 called It Takes a Family. And we need to have policies that support and encourage moms and dads to come together and take care of their children. And we have policies right now that, well, don't necessarily encourage that. We have policies that penalize people who get married. Obamacare is one of them. For the average family, it's anywhere from $4,000 to $10,000 more if you're married under Obamacare than if you're living and cohabitating together. So what are the economic incentives? You have it here in Wisconsin. One of your state senators showed me a chart that if you're a single mom earning $15,000 a year with 2 children, and you're thinking about getting married, you're going to lose about $38,000 in benefits. It's a pretty high bar for someone to have to give up in order to get married. Now, those programs weren't in place to stop people from getting married. They were there to help. But what are they doing? Are they really helping? That's why we've seen in the last 30 years the percentage of people in this country who are married over the age of 18 drop from 71% of the population to 51%, and it dropped 5% in the last 3 years. We're not going to have a strong economy if we don't have strong families. That's as simple as that. So we will go out and do what Ronald Reagan did in forming that coalition that made the difference. Forming the coalition that was strong on life and family and understanding the very foundation of our country is built on those institutions. Understanding of limited government and the potential of our free enterprise system. And of course, being strong around the world. It's hard to believe that the president's failings in foreign policy may actually be more profound than they are here in managing this economy and our government. But this president has turned this country into a paper tiger around the world. Someone that is appeasing and apologizing for America, as opposed to standing up and talking about how America has transformed this world and is a positive source for good. Ladies and gentlemen, I will never apologize for this country. So you have, in a sense, a real choice, and that's what we need. In the last 120 years, ever since Grover Cleveland lost, over 120 years ago, we've only one time have Republicans defeated a Democratic incumbent for president. One time. All the other times, the party establishment, the power brokers in Washington said, we need to win to get the to win the presidency back from all these Democratic presidents, and so they put up moderate after moderate after moderate. And every time we do that, guess what? We lose. One time, we put up a principled conservative. One time, we put up someone that the establishment did not want, opposed uniformly, against one of the worst presidents we've ever had, who rivals this president in his destruction he did to the country, both here at home and overseas. And the Republican voters were told, don't do it. Don't take the risk of putting forth a conservative. Compromise your values. Take something less than what we need, because we need to win so badly. And the voters in 1976, when that issue was put forward, sided with the moderate, and we lost. In 1980, they sided with Ronald Reagan, and we won. And we changed the face of America. In fact, we changed the face of the world. And so I would just ask you, those of you who believe in your heart that we need someone who can go back to our founding principles, who will fight for the things I just talked about here today, you don't have to worry is going to go to Washington, D.C. and reset things and come up with a whole bunch of new different plans. Huffington Post, I think it was, ran an article just a couple weeks ago, and they looked back at all my writings, all my speeches over the last 20 years, and this is what they said. He's remarkably consistent. Governor Romney, after he had their Etch-a-Sketch moment of resetting the campaign after the primary on a whole bunch of different issues, said that he plans to run as a conservative. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm not planning to run as a conservative. I am a conservative. And so I ask all of you here in Wisconsin, next 24 hours, you can reset this race, not with an Etch-a-Sketch, but you can etch it in stone, that the people of Wisconsin, just like you did 2 years ago, when you stood up and you supported a strong, principled conservative for governor and lieutenant governor, and they went in with that rock-ribbed backbone and went out and made big changes. They had big pushback. I feel it. The media, has not been necessarily all that kind to us. They push back against conservatives, just like they do here in Wisconsin with Governor Walker. But you took the chance. You stood tall. And now Wisconsin is leading the country in this fight. I understand everybody's attention is on that recall. But you got 24 hours to send another strong message from Wisconsin, that you want a principled conservative. You want to reset this race. You want to give America the opportunity to have a real clear choice in this general election. And with that clear choice will come a mandate for change. If this election is about Tweedledum and Tweedledee, even if we win, what do we win? Because we won't have the American people behind us to do the big things that are necessary to get our freedom back. That's why I need your support, not just your vote today, but over the next 24 hours to go out and let rural Wisconsin, small town Wisconsin, be heard from. In this race already, we've seen, if you take the state of Virginia out when I was not on the ballot, if you look at all the other states in the country, we've won 937 counties so far. Governor Romney has won just a tad over 300. We know we're going to do well in rural Wisconsin. We know that. Question is, How loudly will rural Wisconsin speak? Small town Wisconsin speak? How many people will come out? How energized? I think in every single race so far that we've won, 11 states, or at least 10 of them. Missouri was a different kind of primary, and so we'll throw that one out. 10 states. Every one of those 10 states, voter turnout was up when we won. Almost every one, and maybe even every one of the states that Governor Romney won, turnout was down. When people, conservatives, get excited, particularly in the rural areas, and turn out to vote, you can win. You get that turnout up, and conservatives can get elected. So I'm asking you over the next 24 hours to join me, to go out and make a difference. And join not just me, but my wife Karen, who's right here. I want to bring Karen on up. She's with us here today. Thank you, please. Thank you. She was on her phone with her mom before we came in, so I couldn't break up that conversation. But we're a team. We've been out crossing this state, and actually Karen was out crossing the state by herself and on Saturday and giving speeches, and we're going to be doing the same thing after Wisconsin. We're going to be crisscrossing the state of Pennsylvania. We're going to win there. The maps look a lot better for us in May. We feel very confident that if we can get a good vote out of Wisconsin, a loud, confident vote from conservatives, then we can go into this race and win this. Win this, not just for me. I mean, this is not about me. This is about putting the best candidate forward. We can nominate a conservative out of that convention. We will win this election. And when we win this election, we'll win it on the big issues of the day and allow the big changes to happen. So you can do right here in Wisconsin, you can start the role. You can start the role to do in Washington what you've done in Madison. I hope I can count on your support. Thank you all very much, and God bless you. Thank you.